Hello everyone, and welcome back to another solo spooky story. My name is Rob, and today I'll be your host. For anyone that doesn't know, these solo episodes are hosted by myself, where I'll take a topic that maybe doesn't have enough content for a main episode, or it's just something that I'm interested in, and we'll just have a one-on-one with each other rather than a conversation between myself and Suze. They're usually shorter episodes as well, because I know some people do prefer the, like 15-minute episodes rather than our usual kind of hour-long episodes. So, we're trying to give everyone something that they like. And yeah, I quite enjoy these short episodes as well. They're fun to do, and they're a different format than the conversational style ones that myself and Suze have. So, and I hope you enjoyed this and you're ready for another just short little topic of the paranormal. Today, we are talking about something that I've been aware of for a while, but was kind of a bit hesitant to talk about because I wanted to do it justice. And I felt like this format, the kind of one-on-one, is much better as a narrative way, I suppose, of telling what this whole topic is about rather than the kind of presenting the case to Suze. So today I am, of course, talking about the Westall UFO incident in Melbourne in Australia in 1966. So this whole story revolves around a number of school children, I think it's about 200 school children witnessing a UFO, as I said, in 1966. And there not really being much of an explanation for what has happened. Kind of since then, effectively, people have acknowledged that something happened, but they don't know what it was. And we'll get into some of the explanations later on. But it's a fascinating story because from what I've seen described online and looking into this, it's very well known throughout the world, but for some reason in Australia, it doesn't actually seem to be that well known. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I did see kind of a few comments online, particularly on Reddit, from Australians themselves saying, I'm Australian, how have I never heard of this? So I just find it quite interesting that it's kind of globally well known, but then within the actual country it happened in, it's less well known, which I just find very, very interesting. So what we're talking about today, as I said, takes place in 1966, the 6th of April to be exact, where a bunch of school children, I believe they were year 7s, so they're 13 maybe, sometime around then, were outside in Melbourne's southeast region. And they are in Westall High School in Clayton South. That's the name of the area. And they're out playing football. They're in a PE class, basically. Just doing their usual thing, PE, as everyone knows, outside doing activities. I'm sure they're enjoying not being inside a stuffy classroom. And yeah, so they're outside doing their own thing. In class, teachers there, everything, when all of a sudden the group hear this noise in the sky and they turn around. There's about 30 students or so there. They turn around and what they see are these, as they described, 3 round aircraft about 8 meters across, the biggest one, hovering above power lines, which are about 200 meters away from the school. So they see these quite large craft floating in the sky. They don't know what to do. And they're kind of just standing there, just shocked, basically. And they're watching them for a few moments when all of a sudden then the class ends and the resale bell rings. At this point then, hundreds of students run outside on their break. And they also now witness these aircraft in the sky just hovering there. And as they kind of come out and join their classmates and school friends outside, seeing these objects in the sky, the objects move away and they appear to land in a nearby reserve called the Grange Reserve. So it's a bit of land away from the school. And that's kind of it for most of the students. They come out, they see these craft in the sky, the craft seemingly react to them being there, and then they move away and appear to land. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the main sighting. That's what was reported. But there are witness accounts from the day, and that's what we're going to kind of get into a little bit more. So witness accounts do vary, as these things do always kind of happen. Some have said that there was only one large UFO. Others reported bright spherical lights that they're unable to explain, and that others have said that there were up to 3 craft. So it's difficult with these sort of cases where you're relying on the word of children to, talk about what they've seen. That, naturally these sort of things could be a little bit confusing, quite overwhelming. And they'd be overwhelming for everyone, but for a child trying to make sense of what they're seeing, it must be also quite difficult as well. But the agreed thing is that there was at least one craft. It was spherical in shape and that it did hover over these power lines for a period of time before moving away and seemingly landing in the grass beyond the school. So one student in particular, Terry Peck, has given her account multiple times about this, and she said that when this happened, that she decided to jump the school fence and run towards the UFO landing site off in the reserve. And the reserve she described as surrounded by pine trees, so it's quite kind of shrouded, I suppose, from the school, which I suppose just adds even more to the story. It's this kind of like shrouded place off at the edge of the school that, you know, it's difficult to see what's going on there. So she says that when she arrived there, the two classmates had actually gone ahead of her, and that as she got closer to the classmates, one of them was screaming hysterically and that she couldn't be consoled at all, that she was basically just in this total state of shock and that she basically was just unable to communicate. She was almost like catatonic, you know, like she didn't know what she'd seen. This girl, Terry, had no idea what she'd seen, and they're kind of shocked by this. Then Terry goes on to say at some point the girl was taken away in an ambulance and never returned to the school, which is just, it makes sense, I suppose, in the sense of if this child has had like a medical issue, like absolutely an ambulance is going to take them away. But I suppose if you're looking at this in the aliens have landed sort of mindset, you're probably wondering like, what did this child see? What happened to her? I'm also aware of just how mental it sounds that, you know, she says that this child was never seen again. I don't really know about that. I just found it kind of funny, I guess, in a sense that it's just this child sees something and then it's just completely removed, never to be seen of again. It's kind of, there's a bit of a sinister implication there, I guess, but it could also be a case that the child just moved schools. But I am aware of how strange that sounds, but I just, you know, didn't want to not acknowledge that, how bizarre it sounds. So Terry goes on then to say that within about half an hour to 40 minutes, she says that the military showed up, including police, fire brigade, and an ambulance for the child. She says that at this point then that they were all effectively told to go back to the school, that there was going to be an assembly, and she says that they were greeted by 5 black-suited people who, as she says, basically told them, "You've seen nothing, go and get on with your lives." And that kind of kills the story in one sense there, because after that there doesn't actually seem to have been any sort of official response from the Australian government. There's been no acknowledgement of this ever taking place. There's been no kind of, you know, statements ever given. It's all just from the word of these children and from witnesses at the time. So what then happens is, you know, to kind of, I suppose, maybe look at it in a broader sense, like this is happening during the Cold War. Like this is the height of the Cold War, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of sightings. There's a lot of like experimental aircraft going around. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you know, maybe that's why there was no statement made, because the Australian government maybe just didn't feel the need to, or they didn't view it as much of a concern. I don't know, just speculating there, but there's a lot going on in the world at this point. Like we're 3 years before the moon landings. We're right in the middle of the space race. The Cold War is at its height. You know, it's only been a few years since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. But kind of just building on this to give it a little bit more legitimacy, the Mutual UFO Network in the States, MUFON as they're known, has said that this case actually has a little bit more legitimacy to it than, you know, people have previously said, and that there is more to this than just the word of the children. So an investigator from there, Clark Watson, has actually said that he thinks it's probably in the top 5 mass sightings worldwide for UFOs. Like he does say, like there's a few hundred students who've seen this, and he again actually says what I said at the start, in that in Australia it's not actually widely known, but overseas it gets referenced a lot. And it seems to be, he's saying that because it's mostly just children, that's why it's not being taken seriously in Australia, and that could very well be the reason. However, he has found in his research that allegedly there were also a group of teachers who came forward, and they claim to have seen it as well. They claim that they actually took photos of it, and that because of government intervention very early on, the cameras and such that they had were seized. And one teacher in particular, he's a science teacher, Andrew Greenwood is his name. He allegedly actually managed to photograph the UFO multiple times. Like he took many, many pictures of it, but then says that the authorities confiscated his camera and it was never seen again. But he actually came forward in an interview with the Australian newspaper, and he said that he saw a cigar-shaped object that looked like grey metal that he perceived was intelligently controlled. And he basically verified what the children had said, in that it was a spherical-shaped object. I suppose for him seeing it looks like a cigar, the children are interpreting it more like as a round shape, but I can see both sides to it. But he also corroborates what the children said in that it moved away and descended into the grove further on. Now, the fallout that came from this is that newspaper The Age, shortly after this, basically reported that a weather balloon that had been released at the time could have moved into the area where the sighting was reported, and they speculated that that's what it could have been. And that seems to be the typical classic weather balloon explanation for these things. And that seems to be, even though it was a paper that was speculating it, that seems to effectively be the main explanation for it. However, the children at the time and since then have actually come out, particularly that teacher as well, Andrew Greenwood, and in a 2021 interview, he actually just said straight up, it most certainly was not a balloon. I've had 55 years to think about it, and I honestly can't come up with anything. So he's pretty adamant, no, there's no way this is a weather balloon, and he's just not accepting that. Children have all come out as well and said that they're not accepting it. And I think the sad thing about all of this is that a lot of the children who've seen it have since said that they're actually struggling with their own kind of like mental health issues as a result of this, because they've effectively gone their whole lives feeling like everything that they've said isn't believed, and that they've struggled with this. They're trying to make sense of what they've seen, and they're effectively being told, you didn't see anything, even though they know they did. So it's just a really fascinating case, It's one of those things where there's not a huge amount to it. Like, a UFO was sighted, it kind of was there for a bit and then disappeared, and that's effectively it. Now, there was some additional reports to say that the ground where it had landed looked like it had been, like the grass had been like boiled or burnt or pressed down, but there's nothing else to that. Like, allegedly the ground looked flattened in the grass, but there's nothing else apart from that. But I just find it as a really fascinating case in that not a massive amount happened, but the fallout from it has actually been quite large. This UFO was seen, it moved away, seemed to land, and then there's those 3 girls that allegedly interacted with it in some way. One in particular was like deeply affected by it. And since then, it's just led to speculation upon speculation, and no one really seems to know what it is. And I think that's what I find so fascinating about it, is that for such a kind of minor case in the events that happened, it's just had such a massive impact on the UFO community and on the world effectively. And yeah, I just found it really, really interesting, and I just wanted to talk about it. So that kind of concludes it, really. When you look into it, there's not actually a massive amount, but hopefully I did it justice. As I said, I was kind of aware about this for a while, and I did want to talk about it, but wasn't really sure the best way to do it, or whether or not I even should. But I think this is probably the best format for it. But with that said, I hope you've just enjoyed this little bite-sized piece of the paranormal, and maybe you've had your own experiences, your own thoughts on UFOs. I'd love to hear them from you. You can share them with us on Instagram at the spookyaf pod. We've actually gotten quite a lot of comments recently on the Irish UFOs short that I did, with people talking about their own experiences with UFOs in Ireland. So if you've had your own experiences anywhere else or in Ireland, please do let us know. You can reach out to us on Gmail at the spookyafpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to get some experiences there as well. We are looking at how to take on all of these experiences for future episodes, so please do share them with us and let us know what you think. And with that, I hope you have a lovely day whenever it is that you're listening to this, and we'll see you in the next one. Take it easy, guys.